The day my daughter said she didn't even know me, I felt something inside me break that never healed the same way again. I remember that moment as clearly as I remember the day she was born. But to understand that day, you must first understand everything that came before it. I was just 23 when my husband died. One moment I had a family. The next I had silence. A silence so heavy that even breathing felt like work. People came for a few days. They cried. They consoled me, they brought food. And then they left, one by one, until it was just me and my little girl. She was only 3 years old. Too young to understand why her father wasn't coming home. Too young to understand why I cried at night when she was asleep. "Where is Papa?" she would ask. And every time, I forced a smile and said, "He's watching you from the sky." I became both mother and father that day. I learned how to be strong, even when I was falling apart inside. There were days I didn't eat enough, just so she could have milk. Nights I stayed awake stitching clothes for neighbors, earning a few extra rupees to pay her school fees. I still remember one winter. It was so cold that year. We only had one blanket. I covered her completely and sat in the corner, hugging my knees, shivering until morning. But when she woke up, I smiled. Because mothers don't show their pain, we hide it behind love. She grew up bright, smarter than I ever was. Teachers would tell me, "You're lucky. She's special." And I would smile proudly, but inside I would whisper, "No, she is not lucky, she is loved." Every achievement of hers felt like my own victory. When she won her first school prize, she ran to me and said, "This is for you, Ma." That day, I cried in front of her for the first time. Not from pain, but from pride. I wanted her to have everything I never had. So I worked harder. I cleaned houses. I cooked for others. I even sold my wedding jewelry piece by piece. Not because I wanted to, but because her dreams were more important than my memories. When she said she wanted to go to a better school, I found a way. When she wanted books, I bought them, even if it meant skipping meals. When she cried, I held her. When she doubted herself, I believed in her. And somewhere along the way, she became my entire world. Years passed. She grew into a young woman, beautiful, confident, educated. Everything I had prayed for. But slowly, something began to change. At first, it was small things. She stopped telling me about her day. Then she stopped eating with me. Then she started correcting me. "Ma, don't talk like that in front of my friends. Ma, you don't understand these things. Ma, please just stay quiet." Each word felt like a small cut. Not enough to kill, but enough to hurt. I told myself, this is normal. Children grow up. They need space. So I stepped back, even when my heart didn't want to. Then one day, she told me she had found someone. A man. She spoke about him with excitement, the same excitement she once had when she talked about her school prizes. I listened quietly. All I wanted was for her to be happy. When I met him, he was polite, well-dressed, confident, but there was something in his eyes, something distant. Still, I ignored it, because love makes mothers blind sometimes. They got married within a year. The wedding was beautiful, bigger than anything I had imagined. I spent everything I had saved and more. I even borrowed money. People told me, "Why are you spending so much? It's not necessary." But I smiled and said, for her, nothing is too much. On her wedding day, I held her hands and said, "Be happy. That's all I want." She nodded, but she didn't hug me. That was the first time I felt truly alone, even in a crowd. After marriage, she moved into his house. At first, she called me every day, then once a week, then sometimes not at all. Whenever I called, she sounded busy. "I'll call you later, Ma. I'm with guests. I have work." Later never came. I would sit by the phone waiting, hours, days. Sometimes I would cook her favorite dishes just in case she came home. But the door remained closed. I started talking to her childhood photos. Do you remember this day? I would whisper to them. This was the day you fell and cried, and I carried you all the way home. I laughed at my own memories and cried at my own loneliness. Neighbors would ask, "Doesn't your daughter visit?" I would smile and say she's very busy. I protected her, even in her absence, because that's what mothers do. We protect our children, even from the truth. Months passed. Then one day, I received an invitation. A grand event. Her husband's family was hosting a celebration, something related to his business success. She called me after a long time. "Ma, you should come." My heart filled with hope. Maybe, just maybe, things would go back to how they were. I wore my best sari that day, the one I had saved for special occasions. I even bought a small gift, though I could barely afford it. When I reached the venue, it was grand. Lights, music, people dressed in expensive clothes. I felt out of place, but I kept reminding myself, I am her mother. I belong here. I saw her from a distance. She looked different, more polished, more distant. For a moment, I hesitated, but then I gathered my courage and walked toward her. "Beta," I called softly. She turned, and for a second, I saw something in her eyes. Not love, not warmth, something else. Something that made my heart uneasy. But I ignored it, because I had come there not as a guest, but as a mother. And I was about to learn that sometimes love alone is not enough to protect your heart. I still remember the way she looked at me that day. Not like a daughter looks at her mother, but like a stranger looks at someone they wish they didn't know. "Beta," I said again, forcing a smile. She glanced around quickly, as if checking who was watching. Then she walked toward me, but not with warmth, with urgency. "Ma, what are you doing here?" she whispered. Her words hit me like a sudden gust of cold wind. I came because you invited me," I replied softly. She sighed. Her eyes filled not with happiness, but irritation. "Yes, but you didn't have to come so early." And she paused, looking at my sari, my worn-out sandals. "You could have dressed a little better." For a moment, I didn't understand. I looked down at myself. This was my best sari, the one I had worn at her wedding, the one I had kept safe like a memory. "Oh, I thought this was fine," I said quietly. She didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed my hand, not gently but firmly, and pulled me aside. "Ma, please just stay here, okay? Don't go around talking to people." "Why?" I asked, confused. "Because you don't know how to behave in these kinds of events." Her words pierced deeper than anything she had ever said before. I felt my throat tighten. "I raised you, didn't I teach you how to behave?" I wanted to say, but I stayed silent, because sometimes silence hurts less than the truth. She left me standing in a corner. I watched her from a distance, laughing with guests, greeting important people, standing beside her husband like she belonged to a different world, a world where I didn't exist. Still, I told myself it's okay. She's just stressed. Big event, important guests. I kept making excuses for her, because a mother's heart doesn't give up easily. After some time, a group of well-dressed people approached her. One of them asked, "Who's handling the arrangements? Everything is so perfect." She smiled proudly and said, "My husband's family." Another person asked, "And your parents? Are they here?" My heart skipped a beat. I leaned forward slightly, waiting to hear her say, "Yes, my mother is here," waiting to feel seen. She hesitated for just a second. Then she laughed lightly and said, "Oh, I grew up mostly on my own. I don't really have anyone here." Those words, those simple, casual words, they shattered me. I don't really have anyone. I felt the ground beneath me disappear. My hand started trembling. My chest tightened as if someone had placed a heavy stone on it. I wanted to scream. "I am here. I have always been here. I am the one who gave you everything." But no words came out, only tears, silent, invisible tears. No one noticed, no one cared, because in that moment, I was no one. I turned away slowly. Step by step, I walked toward the exit. Each step felt heavier than the last. Memories flooded my mind. Her first steps, her first words, the nights I stayed awake when she was sick, the sacrifices I made without ever expecting anything in return. And yet here I was, erased, as if I had never existed. I reached the gate and paused. For a moment I hoped. Maybe she would come running after me. Maybe she would say, "Ma, wait." Maybe she would realize what she had done. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, but she didn't come. So I left. That night, I didn't cry loudly. I didn't break things. I didn't scream. I just sat quietly in my small house, staring at the walls that had once been filled with her laughter. And for the first time in my life, I asked myself a question I never thought I would ask. Was my love not enough? Days passed, then weeks. She didn't call. And this time, I didn't call either. Not because I didn't want to, but because something inside me had changed. I realized something important. Love should not come at the cost of your dignity. I had spent my entire life giving, but I had forgotten to protect myself. So I started doing something new, something I had never done before. I started living for myself. I joined a small community group, met people my age, shared stories, laughed, genuinely laughed after years. I even started teaching children in the neighborhood, for free, because love, when not returned, doesn't die. It just finds a new direction. Months later, one evening, there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there she was, my daughter, standing there with tears in her eyes. For a moment, time stopped. Neither of us spoke. Then she broke down. "Ma, I'm sorry." 2 words, so simple, yet so heavy. I don't know what happened to me. I got lost. I was trying to fit into a world that was never mine, she cried. I was ashamed not of you, but of my own fear. And I hurt the only person who ever truly loved me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I saw my little girl again. The same eyes, the same vulnerability. "I heard what you said that day," I said calmly. She lowered her head. "I know," she whispered. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I stayed silent for a moment. Then I said something I had learned through all my pain. Forgiveness is not about what you deserve, it's about what I choose. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I choose peace," I continued. "I choose to let go of the pain, not because it didn't matter, but because I matter too." She stepped forward slowly. "Can I still be your daughter?" she asked, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath. And then, I did what mothers do best. I opened my arms. She collapsed into them, crying like a child. And I held her, not as someone who had never been hurt, but as someone who had learned that love is strongest when it survives even the deepest wounds. That day, I didn't just find my daughter again. I found myself, and this time, I promised I would never lose myself for anyone again.